So, welcome to the second episode of our Biodynamic Farming 100-year celebration podcast series. And today I'm very lucky and very pleased to welcome our second guest, Dr. Christopher Brock, who is working in Forschungsring in Germany. So happy to have you as a guest, Christopher, and maybe you can introduce yourself a little bit more about your work and what you do at the moment.
Yeah, thank you, Henry. Hello, I'm very happy to be in this podcast. And I am the board member of Forschungsring Institute, which is an independent research institute with a focus on biodynamic food and farming in Germany. But we feel also to be part of the organic farming and research community, but with this focus on biodynamics. And I'm also research coordinator for Demeter Germany, which means that I represent Demeter in the research community and that I organize projects for the members and mainly that. And before that, I have been a researcher at the Organic Farming Institute at Gießen University for 12 years, working on soil fertility and soil organic matter and organic farming mainly. Besides this, I'm also happy to be or to have to run a very little farm privately. Yeah, because I think we researchers that are really committed to organic and biodynamic farming, we always need to be in touch with the soil and with the plants. And
exactly. That's wonderful here, and as we can hear, you have a strong background in the research community and also through many years. And like you said, in the end, it's interesting to say that you also have the small farm. That do you feel as a researcher? Do you feel that it's a necessity to have this practical, your own laboratory on the farm, or does it give you new inspiration, impulses and?
Well, it's not the laboratory. It's not that I want to do research on my farm. It's more really to connect with my subject. So with agriculture, I couldn't do research on agriculture if I would not be personally be in touch with agriculture, and I really need that connection to this let's say this action of doing something in agriculture and directly with the soil, with the weather, with the interrelation between all those aspects in the ecosystem. And I know that this is very common for researchers in organic farming, even perhaps in agriculture besides organic farming, but especially with colleagues in organic farming, I really often find that, well, when you're talking to other researchers and then you find out, they also run a small farm, or at least a big garden, or at least the brother has a farm where they are on a regular basis. So I think, as I said, for me and obviously for some other people, it's more on that, perhaps in biodynamics we could say spiritual or broader emotional level, important to connect to farming.
Exactly, yeah. That it's kind of nowadays when you talk about research and especially now when we have this ecological crisis and how would you feel about if there would be such a like a statement if we look back in the decades like since 70s, 80s, 90s and we have had organic research quite a long time now, but still in the media, even though now with the climate crisis, we're still lagging in at least in the general media that what are the solutions and answers to this climate crisis. And do you feel as a researcher and as a small scale farmer, do you feel that biodynamics and organics could solve the ecological crisis, and how would you do that?
Well, I feel that, or I think that organic and biodynamic farming definitely could solve the crisis, and there's a lot of scientific evidence.
Exactly, yeah.
Of course, there's also evidence that some forms of very cautious, integrated, conventional farming could also be environmentally friendly and maybe a way forward, but there is enough evidence to make us confident that organic and biodynamic farming can be the solution. And for example, we just applied for a project, and when we addressed the aims, the funding aims in the call, then we found that about half of the aims could automatically be reached, just because we were basing our project on organic farming. So the call was open for all kinds of farming. It was a research call related to climate change and climate smart farming and climate protection and all this. And you found that, about half of the aims in the call are automatically solved or addressed by organic and biodynamic farming. So I think we have a lot of knowledge and a lot of evidence of the potential of these farming methods. And if we wonder why there is not more attention for this and why we are not all fully organic, then we just find that, of course, science is one thing, what the society does, and politics and economy is another thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
I think this is just the point. And I remember that there has been a paper, maybe already 12 years or 10 years back, something, perhaps just 8, it does not matter, that was about the benefits of fodder legumes in crop rotations. It was not an organic farming paper, it was a general agriculture-oriented research paper, and they showed the big benefits that fodder legume cropping would have in any crop rotation. And now we could think, okay, if there are so big benefits, then you would have expected that all the farmers, at least in Germany or wherever, would start to crop fodder legumes. But of course, there was, I would say the majority, of course, never even took notice of the paper because it was a research paper. But there is a lot of evidence in research that organic and biodynamic farming have a great potential for sustainable transformation of food and farming systems. But still there's way too little action in the society
exactly,
to really push that forward.
Do you feel that since now with the energy crisis in Europe and now with the high inflation and all these economic challenges we have, do you feel that there would be a momentum now to conventional farms to shift? For example, when in biodynamic farming you have this strong emphasis on this farm individuality, farm organism that can be self-sufficient of fodder and manure and so on. Do you think that at least organic farms or conventional farms how could they transit their farms, change their farms to this, self-sufficient farm organisms? Do you think it's still possible, or do you think the big farming industry is already gone too far?
Well, I think in principle, of course, you could transform every farm. I mean, this self-sufficiency, of course, is a claim that where we must be careful, because no farm, even no organic farm, is self-sufficient because they sell products, and so there is matter and nutrients are leaving the farm, and so there is no circle if you don't get that back from the society. Of course, that means that, of course, we have to close or we have to think bigger with regard of these nutrient circles. But still, what is possible is you can run a farm in a way where you need very, very little input from outside, and where you use ecological regulation in your farm and environmental factors for production, as we do in organics and biodynamics, and try to work with nature, with the ecosystem, with ecological processes and factors to produce food, and that works. And in principle, every farm could be transformed, but of course you need, you must be willing to do that. If you don't believe in organic farming, or if you don't want organic farming, or if you have any objections against it, I mean, it's depending on the humans that do it. In principle, every farm could be transformed. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And how do you feel that, like I said, that many of the research papers that can show, very clearly that organic and biodynamic farming would solve a lot of these ecological crises and almost automatically. But how do you feel that to sort of like transmit this information to the conventional farms. Do you think science as a researcher, do you think, do you have any other ways to do it? Can they hear? Do the farmers hear about the science anywhere? Is it just the industry which is speaking?
No, I think that farmers today, they use different sources for information. They use like this podcast, for example,
exactly.
or other podcasts, and of course there are professional journals, and so there are very many sources of information. But I think what we really would need in our societies is really to integrate these topics like climate and environment, and of course also peace and social justice and everything far more into this education of children, school education, and everywhere. At the moment, you still get the impression that caring for the environment or for peace or whatever is kind of an option that you can do, but you could also just not care about, but it's a necessity.
Exactly.
And until today, that has not been realized by very many people. And if I would know how to change this, I would be very happy. But I remember that since the 1990s, when they wanted to have this education for peace and the environment in the schools and everywhere, the changes were very little that have been made, actually. So still, even today, students in schools it's not very much addressed, that topic, but later on you can study business administration, whatever, and you will not learn too much about caring for the environment. It's always like one goal amongst other goals, and you try to optimize between economic profit and environment, but we should realize that there is no there should not be a conflict of interests.
Exactly. It's very interesting topic this, like you mentioned, that that is the aspect of teaching of the schools, and that we should make these ecological values and peace building, that those should be like topics that should be thought in the schools automatically. But because I think, do you see there's a problem between the big cities and the city life and the countryside, the rural areas? Do you see there is a gap or conflict, or do you think that there is actually that it's just about our awareness nowadays?
I think today it's mostly about our awareness, but of course people living in the big cities cannot have as easily a connection to the country, to the land, to nature as people living in the countryside, even though, of course, many people living in the countryside today do not take too much notice of nature and the landscape, but still there is a closer connection. So I think you can feel that if you talk to people from the countryside, at least they have been a bit more exposed to nature and the weather and whatever, so they will have some more, you could say, knowledge or experience or whatever with the natural world than people from the cities. But in principle, today it's a matter of awareness in the cities and on the countryside. And I mean, when it comes to food and farming systems, then of course we see that perhaps people, even in the countryside, but even more in the cities, are not too much aware of how farming systems really function, about the interrelations and the processes and everything. For example, if in the vegan movement, I think, of course, our nutrition needs to be plant-based in general, but so I do not object to veganism, but still this idea that you could just crop crops everywhere is of course not true, because the soil is just different, and you have and the environmental conditions at a site, and you have many sites and many areas where you just can't grow crops, and you just need to know that, and of course you need some awareness for how does the nature and how does agriculture really function. So even though I don't like the word function here, but it fits in a way.
Could you see that, for example, biodynamic concept of farm individualism or farm organism as a local, this sort of like an entity. Do you see that this could bring new wisdom to this question that what you should farm and where you should farm?
I think that biodynamic farmers, to my experience, because I'm not coming from an anthroposophical background, and so first I met organic farming in general, and then when I went deeper into the movement, then I found there are different groups in that movement, and there are those biodynamics, and what are they doing? And then I found out, okay, these biodynamics, they have it's slightly, or let's say in principle, they have a different mindset coming from that specific background, and in that mindset it is part of that mindset is to try to get in connection with your place and with the farm and with the soil and with the animals on a spiritual basis or on a spiritual level, which may now sound silly for some people today, but that just means, in my opinion, the first step is just to be aware and to be open and to try not just to ask yourself, what do I want to do? And I want to crop this and that here, and I just do that. And if the soil is not fitting, then I make it fit. Or so, of course, today we can shape all the factors in the system according to our needs. And if all the conditions are bad, then we just build glass houses and we can do everything in them. Yeah. But what I like about biodynamic farming is this attitude towards the world or the nature as a partner. And like there's the perception that the farm and the plants and the animals and nature itself, that it is kind of a being they are kind of beings. And of course then you have another attitude to cooperate with something that you could perceive as a being. And if you are not into this spiritual things, then you could just say imagine, you just treat that as if it would be a being, then you would be perhaps more cautious, more careful, more empathic.
Exactly.
And I think this is very, very important.
Yeah. That's very well said. That to have this relationship to the land, the landscape, the soil, animals. That if you have this attitude that the world, the natural world, is a living being, a living entity, however you will perceive it, then you will create this empathic attitude. I think that's very well said, because then it's also, could you say that it's very universal as a research point of view as well, that then you have a universal attitude?
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. Because I know we first met actually in India when we were at Organic World Congress 2017 in Delhi, and since then I followed your work, and I know you also travel a lot around the world, and you know like also a lot of indigenous farming practices, and as a researcher, do you feel that this ecological crisis that we now have, do you think technology or science will solve it, or do you think this new, like you said, you used the word mindset, do you think it's more a question of this new mindset?
Yeah, I think so, definitely, because I think we really need to have this empathic relation. We have to treat nature and the natural world with respect.
Exactly, yeah.
And we should, I don't think that there, or let's say we in the Western cultures, we are used to see us as humans, and outside of where we are is nature. And so sometimes then in the environmentalist movement, there are people that say, okay, we should keep out of the nature and leave nature alone, and we should rewilder Europe or whatever. Which of course, in the perspective of nature, may be a good idea, but if we say that we are also belonging to that world, then I think it is much better to see yourself, and most indigenous cultures do that and take that perspective. You're part of the world. So you do not need to separate. There is nature, and man is only causing harm to nature, and so we should separate, but we should try to live in a way together where we feel connected. And then of course there should be areas in nature where we leave it alone.
Exactly,
Of course, but in principle we belong to that nature, and we should try to take care for at least that part of nature where we are living, and to foster.
Exactly.
And I think this mindset is very, very important, because even in the organic movement today, you can see that there's some kind of, as if they would follow the same track as conventional agriculture did 70 years ago or whatever, to be more efficient, of course, to save the resources today, but just, to do it in a way where, in the end, there are resources out there that you use, and of course you need to save the resources in a way, but it's not working together with the nature. And I think this mindset is very important, and this is something that we can really learn from indigenous cultures. And in biodynamics, it is also present that we say, hey, we have a connection to the world.
Exactly.
We should treat it with respect. And then, of course, based on that mindset, technology and science can help us a lot. I mean, we don't need to go back to ancient times and do it their way. We have very, very valuable opportunities today. I mean, we have technically we have all the opportunities we need to do really to shape sustainable food and farming systems. And ridiculously today, it's not funny, it's more ridiculous, you always seem to have a conflict of interest between economy and ecology and peace. So you either have high quality products and a high quality process, which means that like in organic farming, where you have diverse crop rotation, where you have perhaps dual purpose breeds with the animals, and perhaps you have old varieties or high quality but low yielding varieties in crop production. So that means you have a high quality in your way to farm and high quality in products. And today that automatically means it's expensive. And on the other hand, if we want to make that high quality standard for all the people, then of course today, as people have different demands and interests, it needs to be, let's say, not cheap but affordable. But that today always means to reduce standards. And we seem to have a conflict of interest between quality and and the price. But at the same time, we have all the opportunities today. So if we would really be willing to say, now, this is something that we as societies want to have, we want good food produced in a good way, then I think we could achieve this at a reasonable price or whatever. I mean, it could reach the people, because never before we could, I know the world is not the same everywhere, but at least here in the Western, the European countries, we could live easily, we live very easily today in terms of surviving, because usually we have shelter against the weather, we have a heater against the winter, and we can have food as much as we want in principle. Today it's always a matter of the price, but in principle, I mean, the technique is there and the opportunities. And so I think this is a big issue, to really change the mindset in a way that we really realize in the societies what is important for us and our living on Earth, and then try to find ways to reach that aims and to reach that standards that we want to have, and not always say, oh no, it's economically not feasible. I mean, I know that this is real, but what means economically feasible in the end?
That's an extremely good topic, because I think this is something that you often hear it, especially in Finland, if a farmer says that they want to try to convert into organic or biodynamic, and they say, okay, but then I have too much work, or it's not economically possible. Maybe it's true if you have a conventional farm and you have fixed your production method to some sort of way. Of course, it's not so easy maybe to do the conversion, but I like you said about this mindset that actually we should rediscover this co-creative connection to nature, and then the industry and economic would sort of, could you say that they would adapt this new mindset in any way?
I mean, it would become a decision of the society or of politics. And I mean, imagine water supply in Europe has been an issue to privatize the water, fresh water supply. And then they found out, oh no, this is a critical infrastructure, so we cannot make profit out of it, but it must be just provided as a basic service. And And the same should happen to public transport. For example, some cities or some regions already realized that and now are offering free public transport because they say, okay, this is important for us. And then technically it's possible. And in the same way, it would of course be technically possible to say, okay, we want to have this high standard organic biodynamic production, and we will organize it in a way that it is not dependent on profit or economic feasibility as today. I mean, in principle, if you could just gather in the group, and if you say, okay, we have the land here and we farm it now, and there are people who farm it and there are other people who need the food, then of course you can just organize this and you don't need a single euro. But of course, today, in today's world, that is not possible. But it's important to have that in mind, to keep that in mind, that in principle it's about producing food in a way that is possible and make that available to the people. And of course that is a big challenge at the moment, and I know that it is not easy to convert, and I know that the farms they really struggle economically, and this is all true, that needs to be considered. So I'm not telling them, well, where's the problem? I see a big problem. I just wanted to point to the possible goal far away.
Yeah, and also I can hear a little bit of this attitude that you, maybe the farmers, from my experience also in Finland, the farmers they like to farm. And I think in generally during the decades in Finland, many of the farmers, they listen what the how do you say, the interest groups are telling to them, like MTK or ProAgri, and the farmers say, okay, we produce it like this because the industry wants so. And sometimes I feel that nowadays that maybe farmers should regain some independence and strength and say, okay, we as professionals know what to do. I hear a little bit like you said that it's of course it's a big topic and it's not so easy to do, but sometimes I feel that as the farmers maybe we could rediscover this, like you said, this mindset that you are actually co-creating with nature, not against the nature. And I like that. That's something that I think in Finland I always think that how we can transmit this experience that I think many of the biodynamic farmers have, that they are really independent in this sense, and they have the connection to the land.
I think this community-supported agriculture, of course, is a very promising way forward, even though we don't know how far we could upscale this. But the principle behind it is very great, because this is, again, like a socialization of farming, where you decouple farming from economy and from the price. And of course, it's happening in a larger context, and in that context, again, there is the classical economical rules and frame conditions and everything. But this community-supported agriculture is one possible way forward, or perhaps one part of a solution. And in anthroposophy, or in anthroposophy, Steiner developed this idea of associative farming, which is also very promising because it combines the good things from this I don't know the English term, but for the farming system in the communist countries, but in a way where you put the individual on the basis. So it's not that the demands or the production is defined by the needs. Well, the production in associative agriculture is defined by the needs of the society, but the need of the society is the sum of all individuals.
Yes,
and
exactly.
I think this is very great, and I think anthroposophy always comes back to the individual demands and individuality, which is something that I like very much. Anthroposophy always asks, okay, what does the individual really need? And of course, then you need a good mindset, because if every individual says, well, I need an airplane and 2 cars and I want to eat chocolate every day and whatever, then you will never be able to supply these demands. But if these demands are more or less reasonable, then that will be possible.
It's like you said about this CSA, community supported agriculture, and maybe because I think it's gaining more now attention in Finland as well, and but maybe many doesn't maybe know the history that if I understood correctly, it was few, I think it was Dutch or German biodynamic farmers who basically invented it in the 80s, or at least in Germany they had the first CSA farms, quite many.
Yeah, I'm not very sure about the history. I know that there was that one book of Trauber Grow, US. So I don't know where the concept really developed. But yeah, in fact, again, the organic and biodynamic movement was very important, or let's say this movement came from the organic and biodynamic farms. And perhaps because organic farming and biodynamic even more in the beginning was not just farming system, but they always wanted to contribute to the sustainable transformation of food and farming systems and of the society. So even principles of the organic world movement of IFORM, they address far more than only production.
It's kind of also this topic that I think it's at time to time, I think in Finland it's because the distances are so big, the farms are not so close to each other. So I think the social question is something, it's always a bit difficult in Finland. We also like our privacy, as you know, because you've been traveling in Finland. But we like that we have the space. But I think that something we lost after the wars was the community. That before the wars, the farms, they did a lot of cooperations. There was a lot of small farms. And now we're losing that, or we have already lost that quite a lot. And farms are getting more bigger, but still they're not economically profitable. So somewhere I think we need, as a society, we need this transformation to something else. That is. How do you feel as a researcher? Do you feel that, because obviously you've seen big farms, you've seen small farms, and because I think sometimes that people don't understand that organics and biodynamics can be scaled, and how do you feel? Do you feel that even like very large farms can be sustainable or regenerative if they are organic or biodynamic?
Well, I think sometimes we overestimate our capacity and our ability to pay attention. And so I think upscaling always is a problem, because the more you have to do, the less attention you can pay to the single task or spot.
Yeah, exactly.
That's just as it is. And of course you can then again use other scale effects that are quite positive even for the environment. But you need to just be aware of that you just need to be cautious and find out what farm size and complexity is perceivable for you and manageable for you. And of course for you can even mean for a community or for you and colleagues or whatever. But then I think the larger a farm grows, the more people you would need to pay attention, because of course you can in the end then use very large machines, and then even one farmer can farm huge areas of land, but he cannot pay full attention to that land as he could with smaller spots. And of course we can use sensors and everything to assist this, but I think my fear would be that you lose the connection again to nature, to your farm, to the soil, if your farm and everything grows too big.
Exactly.
So I think that it is not a matter of scale in principle, but it's a matter of the relation between your capacity and the size of the farm you're managing. And if you're really a good group or however you're organized, but if you are running a large farm with sufficient number of people to really pay attention for all the things that need your attention, then big farms can be very sustainable, and of course small farms can also be very unsustainable. If you still for like personal reasons, whatever. There is no direct connection between size and sustainability, but there are limitations as always, and we humans always like to ignore limitations, but you should be aware of the limitations.
That's very well said. Yeah, exactly, and I like that this point of view also that you have that we as humans we have the capacity to farm efficient or small scale, but in the end it's as I hear it's again maybe how do you feel about this, that it's because now we can hear the technocratic attitude coming from farming that the machines will solve the crisis and so on, but when I listen to you I hear again that maybe the question is again about this new mindset of co-working with the nature, not overcoming.
Yeah. Well, I think this is again a question of scale. Of course, if the scale is too big, then you need the machine assistance because your capacity, your attentive capacity is not big enough.
Exactly.
And then of course you need the machines. But if you farm a smaller piece of land that is manageable for you, then I mean, everybody who knows farming knows you need fairly little machines. In the end, you can do farming even without any machine. Of course, then it's a bit laborious, but for example, there are some of these market garden farmers or whatever, small-scale vegetable farming is possible only with hand
tools. No-till methods.
And of course, then you can use like small machines, but you need very small machines only for the more laborious or hard work or whatever. But you don't need all those big machines and robots and sensors in the end, because you can do very sustainable farming based on your ability to pay attention, of your ability to analyze with your senses the soil. Farmers can develop the capacity to know, or the ability to know when is the right time to plant something and how does my animal feel and what do my crops need and is my soil in a good state or whatever. So I wouldn't say that we shouldn't use any machines or computer programs or sensors. We can use them, but today's promise where the machine is going to solve any problem, I just think we don't need that. Of course, we could also develop some spacecraft where we are all going in space, and then everything is fine because we are living in a perfect technical environment, but and then we can also live down here on Earth.
Exactly.
And that's especially with farming, you don't need all those tools, but of course they can help you. And so I would say we should use them, and we should even further develop them, but we should do that cautiously.
That's also something we hear quite often in Finland, that we think about that the technological innovations will solve the crisis, and sometimes I feel a bit funny because we haven't solved the previous ones yet. The depleting of soil, the soil fertility, and now the climate change and everything. So in this sense, I often feel that. How do you feel that if you still have a large scale farm, can you still maintain the quality? Does that also become more difficult if you have like you said, if you have a sufficient manpower to do the work, you have the machines, can you still maintain the quality?
Yeah, I think so, but it becomes more and more laborious, of course. For example, you can for sure not maintain the quality with large fields. And that just means, because we know that biodiversity is really very much dependent on structures, landscape structures. And so the larger your fields, the worse for biodiversity. And that means it's not the size of the farm, but maybe like this. If you only have big fields, then you cannot farm as sustainable as if you have small fields, because even if the quality of your corn may be the same or perhaps even better, and even if you may fully manage with soil fertility, still you will not manage with biodiversity. And so that means that, of course, a farm can be very large if you still manage to have your structures, like hedges, like trees, like small streams or whatever. So a high diversity in your farm landscape, then you may maintain the quality again if you have the capacity, the manpower, the attentive power to do that.
That sounds like that you're saying that the most urgent issue, it doesn't matter if you're conventional, organic or biodynamic, would be to stop the monoculture basically, or the large scale farms, that you need to enrich the biodiversity.
Yeah, the large scale farm or these large scale fields, not the large scale farms they could be large scale, but yeah, of course, we need to develop ways of farming where we better cooperate with the nature. And that means, of course, it's not independent of organic, conventional, biodynamic, because I mean, there is very little reason to carry on with conventional farming, except for, of course, the much higher yields. But I am sure we could also come up with yields in organic farming if we would have more breeding. Much of the yield improvement in conventional farming was not based on fertilization, but on breeding. And of course, we could also come up in organic farming. And still, I mean, there are several very, very good scientific studies that show that we could feed the world organically. But they always say, but then we need to have a shift in food and farming,
like local
food production and food consumption.
Exactly.
So of course we need to take care that there's not that much food waste.
Exactly.
And perhaps we should consume less but better quality.
Exactly.
Of course, much less meat. That is undoubtedly even. I mean, sometimes biodynamics are attacked for having the animals, so we are unsustainable. But biodynamics and organic farming, in principle, has animals according to the capacity of the farm. That means you need to produce your own fodder. And that limits your animals. And if you have that connection, then it has been proven that this makes it even more easy to do sustainable farming and to have a fertile soil and everything.
Enrich the biodiversity.
And so I think in the end, of course, when it comes to, or when the perspective is on agriculture in general, then we need to reduce the animal production by more than 50% for sure.
Exactly.
But when you look at organic farming, then we may need a shift towards ruminants, even though they are producing methane at the same time. They are the animals that eat the clover grass, and the clover grass is again the most important crop for organic crop rotations in terms of soil fertility. Until now, there is no way to really replace the fodder legumes. And at the same time, with ruminants, you can produce food from areas where you can't produce crops, like absolute grassland, as we call it. And at the same time, grassland is very valuable also for climate change mitigation and for biodiversity. So there are many reasons to have more ruminants and less monogastrics. That means less pigs, less chickens, because they need the same food that we need as humans, grains. And so the sustainable organic farming would be farming with animals, or let's say mostly ruminants, but
cows, sheep,
adapted to the
horses,
to the fodder you have on the farms, and very little monogastrics.
It's kind of interesting to hear, like you said, that it's also a scientific perspective. It's so clear. It's like you said that you need to have this soil fertility, and again, when you have ruminants, then you enrich the biodiversity, and then you also you address all these climate issues. Because sometimes I feel in Finland we have a big possibility, because majority of the Finnish soil is this heavy clay soil, which is very good for the clover grass crop rotation. And we used to have a lot of small scale farms that had cows and animals, but we lost that quite a lot. But still, I think it's the awareness of how you could reuse your manure, compost it, and use it in the fields to grow vegetables or strawberries, which is in Steiner's agriculture course 100 years ago. It was very clearly said that this is the way we should farm ecologically, now it's slowly starting to come in the Finnish farming culture, I think, through regenerative farming. But still, it's, I think, as I hear you speaking, it's so clear. Sometimes I struggle. How can you transmit this knowledge to a farmer? That it's interesting.
Yeah. And of course, I mean, organic farms or biodynamic farms usually also want to produce cereals and vegetables and everything. So they have only limited capacity to feed animals. And if you then have animals on that basis, that will usually perfectly fit in your system, which means if we really only had farms that have that amount of animals that fits into the system, then we wouldn't have any problems with the animals disturbing the climate.
Exactly. This is so very well said. I think everyone should hear this, because for me also over 20 years ago, this was like the big realization that if you have the animal numbers according to the hectares of this one farm individuality, then there is no overproduction. Or at least it's restricted. But at the same time, you enrich the soil, you enrich the nature around you. And sometimes I feel very sad that we don't. It's not in our awareness that it's not like magic, or it's not like it's something that we can do. As a farmers, it's a very very practical thing to do, and as a farmers, you could be a hero of this climate change.
So that should be the typical way of farming. And of course, if there are farmers that don't want to have animals, or because they are ethical vegans or whatever, of course there's place for that also in the moment. But I think at the moment it's a bit sad that the ruminants are criminalized in a way, ruminant keeping, because they really play an important role in sustainable farming. But of course, we don't need just one system. We can have several organic and biodynamic systems. We don't need the conventional one, to my opinion. But there can be diversity in farming systems. And of course, we can also have. I mean, of course, you could also in biodynamics. You would ask, well, if there is no animal manure at all, is there no quality lacking in the foods you produce? But of course, this is, in a way, then also a decision. And if people on the other hand say yes, but we don't want to keep animals, then I could also imagine, of course, in organic farming to have successful farms without animals. But again, the mixed farm with animals and crop production, that should be the standard.
Exactly. Sometimes I feel in Finland, if I look my colleagues and especially young farmers who are, because in Finland you still have this tradition that most of the farms are family farms, and the young farmers, they buy the land for the previous generation, and they got quite high debts already, and it's maybe not so possible to invest, and there's so much work. So I think many of the Finnish farms, they let go of the animals because there was so much work, they would need to invest so much. And now they just produce cereals, and it's very difficult to change that after that. And sometimes I feel a bit sad that we should say to the young farmers that if you want to keep animals, you're a hero. We need you.
But of course, then comes economic feasibility again. So we would need, I think it would be good to support this with these community-supported agricultural systems, but at the same time, it would be so great to have political decisions that really support this sustainable transformation of farms, which may also mean that you have your animals again. In Germany at the moment, it's the same situation, that many farmers will stop with their cattle for milk production, even in biodynamic and organic, because it's just economically not feasible. And of course, it's a lot of work, and it would be in modern times, I think it's completely understandable that even farmers should have the possibility to go on vacation. Everybody has the possibility. But that would mean, of course, they would need more people, because if then one family is in vacation, then they need another family to take care for the farm, of course. But at the moment, that would not be economically feasible. So I think we really need a shift, and farmers are really producing farming in the end is one of the few professions that we would need under any circumstances. So
Exactly.
no matter how the world develops, but farming would be still necessary as medicine would be, and so they are really doing one of the basic jobs, and that should deserve much more gratitude.
Yes, exactly.
And it should be made much more attractive for people to do farming.
I like how you use the word gratitude. That I really like it, because it's something that as if your person lives in city and if you have a connection or you regain your connection to the land or to the farms, I think many of the customers they express this real gratitude to the farmers that you are producing this high quality food to my family, and I think this is something that hopefully becomes more like a rule, not an exception, that we recognize the role of the farmers. Could you say, like, as a research point of view, could you say that without the farms, without the food security, we don't have a society security in the end?
Well, I'm not a social scientist, although I would like to be one. But what I know, I have also, I'm not completely out of social sciences, but my specialization was in natural sciences. But yes, of course, I mean, it is very important that our societies, I mean, of course, we can also make something like a large-scale business out of it, where very few people are producing as much food as possible. This will also work in a way, but not in a sustainable one, to my opinion. And that means, of course, it would be highly positive and just good to support farms in their sustainable development. And to make, if I may, this is not from a science perspective, but I would like to tell you that at the school where my own kids are, we just founded a new, I don't know where the high school is the right word, but so it's another school form, typical German school form in my federal state, where you, when you finish that school form, you can go to the technical universities, but even to most regular universities, and all the other jobs are also open. And these schools always have a topic, and our topic is sustainable agriculture. Because we thought that now it's the time to give young people the opportunity to engage in this field. And there are all these Fridays for Future people, and but then we sadly recognized that young people do not want to take that opportunity, and we had so few applications that we could not start with that. But I think it would deserve much more attention, and the job of being a farmer and of running a farm should be made much more attractive.
Yeah, exactly.
And that means it must have the reputation it deserves.
That's a very good point. I think it's also not to make it more attractive to the wider public, but also for the farmers to recognize this appreciation for their work. Because I think that's something that Finnish farmers are really struggling, that they feel that there's no appreciation to their work, and for me also doing professional farming, but also coming from the city background, I always think about that, you are heroes, but you just have to awake to this reality. Maybe just to close it a little bit, I think one topic we talked about earlier was interesting to hear from you, that because also, like I mentioned, I know you work with the small farms and with the big farms, and the research field very throughout. We discussed about the topic of economics, and now the world is really in big change. There's a lot of chaos, a lot of turmoil in the economic field, and the ecological crisis. And how do you feel about this connection that farming has to economics? Of course, it's completely own topic. We should have another podcast maybe about this topic. But you mentioned CSA, the community supported agriculture, which is the new model of this economic model as well. But how do you feel about the topic of economics and farming? Do you think that there's a big problem there, or?
I mean, we already talked about that. So yeah, I think this is even the basic problem.
Yeah.
As I said, we have the opportunities to do good farming, and we even have the knowledge. There's so much knowledge about good production and an ecological point of view, and the challenge is always to make it economically feasible.
So you feel the main challenge is the economics in the end. And that's interesting.
And let's say the economic is the middle challenge, and the main challenge behind all that, of course, is again the mindset.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's a social question. Because economy will not change before the mindset in a way changes.
Exactly.
And then economy needs to change, and then the, let's say, physical world changes last, which is ecology. Then,
but this again, you say this. I have to point out this thing, because you say it so confidently, so peacefully, that behind the ecology is the social question in the end. And this is something that, from my experience, it's if as individuals we would awaken to this, that economy in the end it's a social interaction.
Yeah, it's a tool that has been developed to, let's say, facilitate social interaction in a way of supply and demand and exchange, and but it's not a value in itself. It's just to serve the humans.
Very well said. Value, not the value itself, just to serve. But if I would now go to the street of Helsinki and I say, hey, let's talk about economics and farming, people would be, okay, well, we can talk about, forget the farming. But even people think economics very abstract. And I just, for my heart sings when I hear a person saying that the economics is not actually the biggest problem, but it's the social questions behind it. And how do you feel? Do you feel that these are the challenges we can overcome, or to find this new mindset? Do you have a belief in humanity that?
Let's say in the end, yes. I think I'm confident that. Humanity will go on, and I also have the belief that, let's say, I'm not too confident that it will happen too fast, but I think that we as humans at least have the potential and the capacity to transform in that way. And this is why I'm working for the movement, and why I appreciate all those people working in that great movement of biodynamics and organic farming, and even in other fields where they are working for a sustainable future, because there are in fact many drawbacks at the moment, but I see that we have the potential, and so we should not stop to work for the transformation, even though it may be very humiliating and disappointing then and when, but then maybe then again there are all these small successes, and then maybe we will once have a bigger success. And so I wouldn't say we make it, but I say we have the potential to make it.
Exactly. And I think that's very well said. And well, just a very, very end closing thought. 100 years of biodynamics. So what do you feel next 100 years of biodynamics will bring? Challenges, solutions, just a short...
I mean, biodynamics also is in transformation at the moment, because the time when biodynamics has been created in the 1920s is far away now, and not only far away in years, but also far away in, let's say, the circumstances, societal and whatever. So everything changed, and so biodynamics is also changing. It became very international today, which is very nice. It takes up impulses from all the places over the world, so there are no more only the German and Swiss and Austrian people going abroad and then developing biodynamics, but today the biodynamics is developed also by people from South America, from India, from other Asian places. Africa is also starting, and this is great, and I think there will be transformation. And I think that as biodynamics, we shouldn't try always, which some people do, but of course not all, to prove that we are best and that we are better and only our way to do farming is the solution. But I think we can be quite aware of our potential. So we are part of that movement to transform food and farming systems in the end, and we offer very, very valuable solutions. We can offer very valuable impulses, and and then we can work together with all other actors in that movement that contribute to the same goal in a way that is good for man and earth.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh wow, I think that's a very nice way to end this podcast series. Thank you so much, Christopher. It was an absolute pleasure,
Henry.
and we'll make a second episode of the economic
I will
question.
be happy